Ready to awaken the giant within. We're diving deep into Tony Robbins' book today.
You've got a stack of inspiring stories and advice here.
It's all about living a more fulfilling life, right?
Right. And Robbins lays out a path to master 5 core areas of life.
5.
Emotional mastery,
Okay,
physical mastery,
got it.
relationship mastery,
Uh-huh.
financial mastery,
Makes sense.
and time mastery.
Wow, so like leveling up in every aspect of life.
He emphasizes how interconnected these areas are, too.
So you can't really succeed in one without the others.
Exactly.
Interesting. So since you're into self-improvement, let's see what Robbins can teach us.
Sounds good.
Let's start with the power of decisions.
One of the most powerful ideas in the book.
Absolutely. Robbins' whole philosophy is built on this belief that
Our decisions shape our destiny.
not our conditions.
Right. He even starts the book with this story of his own transformation.
Oh, yeah.
He went from a broke janitor to a self-help guru in just 10 years.
10 years. That's incredible. What happened?
He had this realization that he was living a life he hadn't chosen.
Like a wake-up call.
Exactly.
It makes you think about what decisions we're making every single day without realizing it.
And how those decisions are shaping our lives.
Totally. So how do we make those life-altering decisions?
Well, Robbins really highlights this difference between being interested in something and being committed to it.
Okay.
It's the difference between, saying, yeah, I'd like to learn guitar someday,
Uh-huh.
and actually scheduling those lessons and practicing every day
So commitment is what fuels action.
and leads to real change.
He uses some inspiring examples, too,
Oh, absolutely. Like Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus.
which sparked the civil rights movement.
Or Ed Roberts, who was a quadriplegic.
Wow.
He became the first person in his condition to graduate from UC Berkeley,
That's amazing.
and then a powerful advocate for people with disabilities
So ordinary people making extraordinary choices.
and transforming their lives.
I love that. But how do we actually make those choices? It can feel overwhelming.
Robbins gets that. He acknowledges that it's okay to feel uncertain about the how at first.
So, like, just make the commitment.
Yes. The most important thing is the commitment itself.
Okay.
He compares it to jumping out of a plane and trusting you'll figure out the parachute on the way down.
That's a scary analogy.
But once you've committed, the how will often reveal itself.
Makes sense. He also gives this framework called the ultimate success formula.
It's a roadmap for turning decisions into reality.
Okay, so what are the steps?
First, you clearly define what you want.
Define your goal.
Then you take massive action.
No dipping your toes in the water.
Dive in head first.
Love it. What's next?
Pay attention to what's working and what's not.
Like evaluating your progress.
Exactly. Are your actions getting you closer to your goal?
Or are they taking you further away?
Right.
And that's where the 4th step comes in.
Adapt your approach based on what you're learning.
So like navigating a new city without a map.
You might take some wrong turns, but eventually you'll find your way.
I like that analogy. So it's okay to make mistakes.
It's about learning from them.
Robbins uses a great story to illustrate this.
Soichiro Honda, the founder of Honda Corporation.
Oh, yeah. He faced so many obstacles.
Rejections, wartime shortages, bombings.
Even an earthquake that destroyed his factory.
But he kept adapting, learning, and eventually...
He built one of the biggest car companies in the world.
Exactly.
Wow, talk about resilience. He also includes those amusing rejection letters.
Famous authors received for their books.
Like Animal Farm and The Diary of Anne Frank.
It's incredible, right? Even the greats faced doubt and rejection.
It's encouraging in a way.
It highlights the importance of a long-term focus.
Something that's hard in our instant gratification culture.
He talks about the dangers of short-term thinking.
Like the savings and loan crisis.
People made risky, short-sighted decisions for quick gains.
And it led to disaster.
Or even constantly checking social media.
Instead of focusing on deeper connections.
It's about delaying gratification for something more meaningful.
Like Billy Joel, right?
He almost took his own life because he felt his career wasn't taking off fast enough.
But he shifted his perspective.
And achieved lasting success.
It reminds me of that Robbins quote, "God's delays are not God's denials."
He compares life to seasons.
Even challenging times are temporary.
Like winter giving way to spring.
That's a nice thought. So to harness the power of decisions,
Robbins gives us 6 key points.
let's focus on a few. Make decisions often right.
Yes, the more we practice, the better we become.
And learn from every decision.
Whether it's a success or failure.
Every choice is a learning opportunity.
And stay committed to the decision, but flexible in your approach.
Okay,
Like knowing you want to climb a mountain, but being open to different paths.
I can see that. And most importantly, enjoy the journey.
Decision-making shouldn't feel like a burden.
It should be exciting.
Absolutely.
So we've explored the power of decisions.
Now let's dive into another core concept, the force of pain and pleasure.
This is where things get really interesting.
Robbins argues that understanding this force is key to unlocking our potential.
And he starts with two very different people, Mother Teresa and Donald Trump.
They have different values, but both are driven by pain and pleasure.
So it's not about judging their values.
But recognizing that what we link pain and pleasure to shapes our choices.
It makes you think about what drives you.
What brings you satisfaction?
And what do you avoid because it brings you discomfort?
Exactly. Robbins believes we can consciously use this to our advantage.
How so?
He shares stories like how he developed an aversion to beer as a child.
Yes.
He associated it with negative behavior of adults.
He didn't want to be like them.
So his mind linked pain to that behavior.
And he even took this further with his own children.
He exposed them to the harsh realities of drug addiction.
To create a strong association between drugs and pain.
It's a controversial approach.
But it raises an important question. How can we use this knowledge to make healthier choices?
For ourselves and even guide our loved ones.
That's what we'll uncover in part 2.
We'll explore how Robbins believes we can manipulate our pain and pleasure associations.
To achieve our goals and live more fulfilling lives.
That's powerful stuff.
I can't wait.
Me neither. Welcome back. Last time we were talking about the force of pain and pleasure.
And how understanding it can help us make healthier choices, right?
Right, and Robbins points out how advertisers are already using this.
Really?
Yeah, he gives some interesting examples, like how blue jeans became cool.
Blue jeans, weren't they just work pants?
Exactly. But advertisers link them to feelings of sexiness, rebellion, youthfulness.
And everyone wanted a pair.
That's the power of association.
What about those California raisins?
Remember those claymation raisins dancing to Motown?
Oh yeah, they were everywhere.
They made raisins cool.
It's amazing how advertising influences us.
It's all about manipulating our perceptions.
And ultimately our choices.
Exactly. And this plays out in politics too.
Really?
Robbins breaks down the 1988 Bush-Dukakis campaign.
Interesting.
The Bush campaign used fear tactics, linking Dukakis to crime and weakness.
Wow, so they were playing on people's fears.
To sway voters.
It's kind of unsettling to think about.
It is, but that's why Robbins wants us to understand this force.
So we can take back our power.
Exactly. He says, you too can advertise in your own mind.
What does that even mean?
You can consciously link pain to unwanted behaviors.
And pleasure to the ones you want.
Right.
Okay, but how do we actually do that?
Robbins lays out a process. It starts with awareness.
Of our current associations.
Right. What actions have you been putting off and why?
Let me think. Well, I've been meaning to start meditating.
Okay. And why haven't you?
I always find an excuse. It just feels hard.
So you associate it with pain.
Yeah, the pain of having to sit still and quiet my mind.
And what's the pleasure you get from avoiding it?
I guess the satisfaction of checking things off my to-do list.
Or the ease of scrolling through social media?
You know me too well.
But when you think about the long-term pain of not meditating,
Increased stress, poor focus, health issues.
it starts to outweigh the short-term pleasure.
Yeah.
You're right. Now flip it around. What's the long-term pleasure of meditating?
Feeling calmer, more centered, having better relationships.
Make it vivid. Imagine yourself handling stress with grace.
Connecting more deeply with people.
By focusing on that pleasure.
You can outweigh the discomfort and motivate yourself.
Exactly. It's like reprogramming your mind.
To align with your goals.
Robbins calls this neuro-associative conditioning.
Neuro what?
It's the idea that we can rewire our brains by changing our associations.
Okay, break that down for me.
Imagine your brain as a network of pathways.
Uh-huh.
Every time we think, feel, or do something, we strengthen certain pathways.
And weaken others.
Right. Neuro-associative conditioning is about consciously choosing which pathways to strengthen.
So creating new habits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like paving a new road in your brain.
That leads you to your goals.
Precisely. And we can use this to overcome fears. Break habits, create change.
It's like hacking our own minds.
Robbins also emphasizes the power of language.
What do you mean?
He talks about developing a transformational vocabulary.
Using words that empower us.
Instead of words that limit us.
So instead of saying, I'm terrible at public speaking.
You might say, I'm developing my skills and becoming a more confident speaker.
Oh, I see. By changing our language, we change our beliefs.
And ultimately our actions.
This is fascinating. It's all connected.
From decisions to pain and pleasure to rewiring our brains.
It's all coming together.
And there's more. Robbins goes on to explore our core values and beliefs.
the driving forces behind our actions.
And in part 3, we'll see how he applies all this to those 5 core areas.
Physical health, relationships, finances, time management.
It's about creating a life that reflects your full potential.
I'm ready. Let's do it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground decisions, pain and pleasure, even rewiring our brains.
But now let's see how Robbins applies all this to specific areas of life.
Time for some action steps.
He dives into physical mastery relationships, financial mastery, and time mastery.
A whole lot of mastery.
He provides tools and strategies for each.
Let's start with physical mastery.
Okay.
Robbins asks, is it worth achieving everything you've ever dreamed of if you don't have the health to enjoy it?
It really makes you think.
Our physical well-being is the foundation for everything else.
It's not about perfect health,
Right.
but making choices that support our energy and vitality.
So what does he suggest?
It's not just diet and exercise.
Yeah, there's more.
He talks about sleep, stress management, even a positive mental attitude.
So it's a holistic approach
He wants us to see our bodies as instruments
that need care and attention.
to function at their best.
Okay, let's move on to relationships.
One of Robbins' most famous quotes is, "The quality of your life is the quality of your relationships."
That's a powerful statement.
Our relationships shape our experiences, our emotions, even our purpose.
But does he give specific advice?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He offers strategies for communication
Understanding each other's needs.
and resolving conflicts.
What about keeping the spark alive in long-term relationships?
He talks about that too. Creating shared experiences, expressing appreciation.
Growing and learning together.
It's about keeping things fresh.
Now, for a topic that can be tricky, financial mastery.
Robbins challenges the idea that money equals happiness.
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
He says financial stress comes from a feeling of scarcity.
Regardless of how much money you have.
It's about shifting your mindset from, I don't have enough, to, I have abundance.
So it's an internal thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants us to see money as a tool for creating the life we want.
And making a positive impact.
He also emphasizes financial goals, smart investments, and a plan for freedom.
Okay, last but not least, time mastery.
In today's world, it feels like there's never enough time.
That's for sure.
But Robbins reminds us, masterpieces take time.
I like that.
He goes beyond typical time management tips,
So what does he focus on?
taking a deeper look at our priorities and values.
Are we spending time on what truly matters?
Or are you letting distractions control us?
It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life.
He stresses setting boundaries, saying no, and being intentional with our time.
That's easier said than done.
He also suggests breaking down big goals into smaller steps
So we don't get overwhelmed.
and focusing on making progress each day,
Even small actions can lead to big results.
when done consistently over time.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive into Awaken the Giant Within.
We've explored Robbins' principles for mastering all areas of life.
It's been an incredible journey.